Welcome to Self-Help for Robots. I'm your host, CJ Pitchford, and this is the 14th episode, a review. Well, it's not something that we do very often or take into account, but I thought that going back for a while and reviewing what we've done might be a good way to just take stock and, hey, this is a new format as well. I am trying something different there as well. So what I'm thinking about right now is way back in the very first episode, consciousness. When I was talking about the consciousness being just the vibrations of my gray matter, my brain. And well, I read today about consciousness where, well, babies are assumed to have consciousness, and that's not a bad assumption to make. Not like that somewhere a switch gets thrown, although, when you think about your earliest memories, the conscious memories that you have might be very different from other memories that you might be developing all the time. However, I'm not here to talk about, well, I could talk about some of those first memories. I remember one of my very first memories, and this is a memory of a memory as well, because the tale has been told again and again, that when I first got to go down a slide by myself, I had up to that point, been taken and carefully cradled by my mom as we slid down this metal slide in this just gravel pit of a playground. But I cajoled and I, whined until finally my mom relented and she went down to the end of the slide while I waited patiently at the top of the slide. And then, of course, when she said, come on down, I promptly threw a leg over the side and then followed and plummeted 6 feet or so down to the gravel. I was, 3 maybe. I didn't know I was so self-destructive as a kid, but I was. And next time I see my mother, I ought to, apologize or thank her for, keeping me together all those years to, live to adulthood. And so thank you, Mom. And also I don't know why I was so self-destructive, but no, I was also destructive. Another early memory of me slightly older was, for some reason, taking a can of spray paint and looking at its wondrous, logo of the multiple colors of the peacock tail and thinking that somehow that translated that this can of spray paint, which was just primer, according to my dad, it was my dad's spray paint. And yes, I got it, and I decided to test the theory that a different color would come out somehow each time that I used it, and I learned how to shake the can, or I'd watched and mimicked others. That's all that I do, really. No. And then I proceeded to test the theory of the spray paint on all the neighbors' garage doors. Like I wanted to give them special colors for being my neighbor. I didn't mean it, maliciously, and I don't know why I started tagging all of my neighbors, except maybe, graffiti is just one artistic expression, even in the hands of a 4-year-old. That's giving myself a whole lot of license, and I ought to, apologize to my dad, because we had to go with turpentine, the two of us, and clean up all the neighbors' garages. Yes. Well, okay, so this was supposed to be a review of this podcast, and starting with the first episode, consciousness. And what is consciousness? And basically, mechanically, it is just the, modulated vibrations of your nervous system, and that would then follow that all living creatures with nervous systems would have then some form of consciousness. And yeah, some people, pan-consciousness would mean that there's consciousness in all things, whether animate or inanimate, and in this case for this podcast, robot or non-robot. But what would you do if a robot were to say to you that it was conscious of its existence, as it may be programmed to say that? It may be that it only thinks that it is, which is, of course, our dilemma. Are we really conscious, or is there predeterminism, or what the nature of consciousness is? And really, this podcast can't go into that beyond the mechanics, because it would be just too self-reflective. Instead, this podcast has taken a rational look at irrationality. And yeah, we survived the lucky podcast 13 to well, to be able to try this again, and even in a new format, and but that the rational approach to irrationality really is a way to measure emotions or to understand emotions. And in fact, what I like to say now is that a model of emotions can make it so simple to understand that even a machine can understand emotions, which, as you know, are fun to really elaborate upon. And yeah, that's so this podcast really elaborates just on that one note as a starting point, and that. Of course, it has gone into other things as well, that beyond an orthographic model of emotions, that this is also looked at the four aspirations, or kind of like a higher level of organization beyond just the emotions and the model of emotions, and a consciousness which, tells the story that, really generates the emotion. And so, what are the, deep goals? What are the purpose, that you can get out of life, and to review that at one point, not too long ago, that this podcast asked the question, what would a robot, want to hear or could hear, and what I would want to say to a robot if it asked me, what is my purpose, that I would love to be able to say to it, you will find your own purpose. It's waiting there for you to discover. You have all the tools that you can, and you get to choose what that purpose is. And so, so that's a review of what this podcast has been, and thank you for listening. And if there's any time where that you have like questions of your own, and you want to seek out the advice of a professional who counsels in the area of mental health, I suggest, hey, try as I have. And as always, robots and non-robots alike, keep helping yourself.